Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's The Longevity Lab MD podcast. Today we're going to be diving deep into something that I think you'll find really fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
It has the potential to really change how we think about health, and especially early detection. I'm talking about liquid biopsy.
Liquid biopsy.
Yeah, and we've got some really great info on a company called Lucence, who is doing some pretty amazing things in this area.
I think our listeners are going to be blown away by this, especially if they are, those health enthusiasts who really like to stay on top of the latest developments.
Right. So just to get us all on the same page, maybe you can give us a quick rundown of what liquid biopsy actually is.
Sure. Most people have heard of traditional biopsies, where doctors have to actually go in and take a tissue sample.
Right.
But liquid biopsy is way less invasive. It just requires a simple blood draw.
So, how does that even work?
Yeah.
Can you really find traces of cancer in just a bit of blood?
You can. Basically, when cancer cells grow, they shed tiny pieces of their DNA and RNA into the bloodstream. And these little pieces act like signals.
Like red flags.
Exactly, like red flags that something might be off. And what liquid biopsy technology does is it's designed to pick up on those flags. And Lucence, they have this technology called AmpliMark, and it's super sensitive at detecting these cancer biomarkers.
Oh, wow. So they're able to find even the tiniest little traces of cancer DNA.
Exactly.
So I'm sure there are other companies working on liquid biopsy too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's a pretty competitive field right now. But Lucence, they stand out for a few reasons.
Okay, liquid.
Well, for one, they're the first Asian company to get Medicare approval for their cancer test kit here in the U.S.
Oh, wow. That's a big deal.
It is. It means more people can have access to this type of testing, and they also have this really inspiring founding story.
Oh, I do love a good origin story.
So the company was founded by a guy named Dr. Pan Minhan. He was actually a medical oncologist himself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he saw firsthand how tough it was for patients who were diagnosed with cancer at later stages, when the treatment options are more limited. And that experience really drove him to develop this technology that could detect cancer much earlier.
That is inspiring. So tell me, what did they end up developing?
Well, their flagship product is called Liquid Hallmark.
Liquid Hallmark.
And it's a blood test that can actually profile 80 genes and 15 different types of cancer.
80 genes. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And it doesn't just detect the presence of cancer. It can actually give doctors information that helps them pick the most effective treatment.
Oh, so it's like personalized medicine.
Exactly.
That is incredible. So where can people get this test? Is it available now?
It is. Lucence actually has dual headquarters now, one in Singapore and one in Palo Alto.
Wow.
They've also teamed up with Mayo Clinic Laboratories.
Really?
Yeah, to make Liquid Hallmark accessible internationally.
That's amazing. So they're really trying to make a global impact.
For sure.
It sounds like they've accomplished a lot in a pretty short amount of time.
They have.
But I am curious, do they have any other products in development?
They do. They have another product. It's called Lucence Insight.
Lucence Insight.
Yeah. And get this. It can detect 50 types of cancer.
50? Are you serious?
I know.
That's incredible. So clearly they're really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with this technology.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I have to ask, this might seem a little out of left field, but with their focus on, kind of pivoting to address these big global health concerns, did they do anything during the pandemic?
That's a really great question. And actually, yes, they did. When the pandemic hit, they actually shifted gears to develop a saliva-based COVID test.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they really wanted to use their expertise to address this urgent health crisis.
I love that. It shows they're really committed to making a difference. Okay, so we've talked about, this incredible technology and Lucence and the company behind it, but let's circle back to liquid biopsy for a sec.
For sure.
I think it's safe to say that early cancer detection is a good thing, but what are some of the other big advantages that stand out to you?
Well, for starters, it's way less invasive than traditional biopsies.
Right.
I mean, imagine being able to get screened for multiple types of cancer with just a blood test.
Yeah.
No surgery, no big needles.
Right. That's amazing.
It's a total game changer, especially for those who are, very health conscious and want to be proactive. And, it can potentially catch cancer at much earlier stages.
Well, yeah, for sure. Like catching a small problem before it snowballs into something huge.
Exactly.
But, we keep saying things like, oh, this test looks at 80 genes or 50 cancers. It seems so complex.
It is.
What's the science behind all of this?
It really is fascinating. So remember how we talked about those tiny bits of DNA and RNA that cancer cells shed?
Uh-huh.
Well, the key is being able to actually find them in the blood and then analyze them.
Right.
That's where Lucence's AmpliMark technology comes in.
Oh, yeah.
They've developed these super sophisticated algorithms that can spot these cancer biomarkers even when they're in super tiny amounts in the blood.
So it's like they're these high-tech detectives
Yeah.
sifting through all this information.
Exactly.
It's incredible what technology can do these days. But even with all this advanced technology, I'm curious, are there any limitations to liquid biopsy?
Yeah, there are always going to be limitations with any new technology. I mean, one thing is that while liquid biopsy is really good at telling us if cancer is present, it can't always tell us the exact location of the tumor.
So it's like having a smoke detector going off, but you don't know which room the fire is in.
Yeah, a perfect analogy.
So in those cases, you'd still need to do traditional imaging or even
Uh,
biopsy.
Yeah, exactly. But even if it doesn't completely replace those methods, it's still an incredibly valuable tool for early detection and treatment planning.
Right. Okay, so speaking of treatment, how does liquid hallmark actually help doctors choose the best course of action?
Well, it all comes down to personalized medicine.
Yeah.
Let's say someone has lung cancer.
Okay.
Liquid Hallmark can not only tell the doctor, yes, there is cancer, but it can also reveal if there are any specific mutations in the cancer cells that might make them susceptible to certain therapies.
Oh.
So the doctor can then choose a treatment that is specifically designed to target those mutations.
So it's way more effective than just a general one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly.
That's incredible. It's like having a personalized roadmap for your cancer treatment. I imagine that gives patients so much more hope and a sense of control.
Absolutely. It really empowers them to make informed decisions, and it gives doctors the tools they need to provide the most effective care possible.
This is so fascinating. We've covered so much ground, from the science to the patient benefits.
Yeah.
What is it about this whole field that really resonates with you?
You know, for me, it's the shift we're seeing in how we approach cancer for so long. It's been about reacting to a diagnosis.
Right.
Now, with liquid biopsy, we can be proactive, we can detect cancer earlier when treatment is more likely to be successful, and we can tailor the treatment to each individual patient.
It's a completely different way of thinking. It's really inspiring. But as excited as we are about all of this, we should acknowledge that it's still early days for liquid biopsy,
Point for sure, we're still learning a lot.
and there are probably some challenges that need to be addressed.
Absolutely. One of the big ones is making this type of testing accessible to everyone.
That's a really good point, especially with early detection being so important. Are there any initiatives in place to address that?
There are. Lucence is really committed to making their tests more affordable, and they've made some great progress in reducing costs as they've grown.
That's encouraging. Are there any other challenges that you see on the horizon?
I think refining the technology to make it even more accurate and expand its use is a constant challenge.
Makes sense?
You know, right now, liquid biopsy is really good at detecting certain types of cancer, but there's still work to do to make it even more reliable for a wider range of cancers.
So what's next for liquid biopsy? What are some of the big questions that researchers are trying to answer?
Well, one of the areas that I find really exciting is using liquid biopsy to monitor how well someone is responding to treatment.
Oh, wow.
So imagine being able to track someone's response to chemo or immunotherapy just by doing a blood test.
That would be amazing. No more waiting for scans to see if the treatment is working or not.
Exactly. It could really revolutionize how we personalize treatment and make sure that people are getting the best possible outcomes.
So early detection, personalized treatment, proactive care. It sounds like liquid biopsy is really changing the game.
I think so. And it's not just about the technology itself. It's about the shift in thinking. It's about giving patients and doctors the information and tools they need to make better decisions about their health.
Well said. This deep dive has been truly eye-opening. We've learned so much about the science behind liquid biopsy, the companies like Lucence that are leading the way, and the incredible potential it has to transform healthcare. But before we wrap things up, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
For our listeners who are totally fascinated by this and want to stay ahead of the curve, what advice would you give them? How can they learn more and stay updated on all the latest developments?
You know, I think the most important thing is to just stay curious. There are so many resources available online, from reputable medical journals to science websites and even podcasts like this one.
How to get that plug in.
But really, there's a ton of information out there. And if you really want to go deep, I always recommend checking out the websites of companies like Lucence.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They often have really great resources that explain the science and the research.
Don't be afraid to ask your doctor about it.
Exactly. The more we talk about liquid biopsy, the more awareness we raise, and the more likely it is that this technology will become more widely available.
Absolutely. So to our listeners, stay curious, stay informed, and don't hesitate to ask questions. The future of healthcare is constantly evolving, and liquid biopsy is definitely one of the most exciting things on the horizon.
I completely agree. It's a fascinating field with so much potential, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds.
Okay, so we're back, and I think it's time to talk about the elephant in the room,
Hmm.
cost.
Ah,
Because I think whenever we talk about cutting-edge medical technology, it's natural to assume that it's going to be expensive.
well, you're not wrong. I mean, developing and implementing this kind of technology, it does require a significant investment.
Right. But is that something that could change over time? As it becomes more widely available, do you think the price will come down?
I think that's definitely a possibility. We see that with a lot of new technologies. Initially, it's expensive, but as it becomes more common and more companies get involved, the prices tend to become more competitive.
Okay, so there's hope for the future.
Oh, absolutely.
But even if the cost does come down, I'm curious about other limitations. Are there any other challenges or drawbacks we should be aware of?
One thing to keep in mind is that while liquid biopsy is really good at picking up on those cancer signals, it doesn't always give us the whole picture.
Hmm.
So sometimes it might detect the presence of cancer DNA, but it can't tell us exactly where the tumor is located.
So it's like knowing there's a fire, but not knowing what room it's in.
Exactly. And in those cases, doctors would still need to rely on traditional imaging or even a biopsy to confirm the diagnosis and figure out the stage of the cancer.
Okay, so it's not a perfect replacement for those methods,
Right.
but more like a complementary tool.
Exactly.
Got it. But even with those limitations, the advantages of catching cancer early, they seem pretty undeniable.
Oh, without a doubt.
And there's that other area you mentioned, the potential for using liquid biopsy to monitor treatment.
Yeah, that's one of the most exciting areas of research right now.
Tell me more.
So imagine being able to see how well someone is responding to chemo or immunotherapy just by analyzing their blood.
Wow.
So no more waiting weeks or months for scans to see if the treatment is working. You could get real-time feedback.
That'll be amazing.
Right. It could totally revolutionize how we personalize treatment and make sure that people are getting the best possible outcomes.
So we've got early detection, personalized treatment, a more proactive approach to healthcare.
Mm.
It feels like liquid biopsy is really pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Absolutely. And, it's not just about the technology itself. It's about changing the way we think about health. It's about moving away from reacting to problems and towards preventing them.
Right. It's like that old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly.
Well, this deep dive has been incredible. I feel like I've learned so much. What are your final thoughts on this whole topic?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that liquid biopsy represents this huge shift in how we approach healthcare. We're moving towards a world where we can be more proactive and more in control of our own health.
And that's a powerful message.
It is.
So for all of our listeners out there who are just as fascinated by this as we are, what advice would you give them? How can they stay informed and stay ahead of the curve?
Stay curious. That's the biggest thing. Don't be afraid to do your own research. Talk to your doctor and keep asking questions.
Great advice. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Lucence and the incredible world of liquid biopsy, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. It's been a truly enlightening conversation.
It has.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration of the future of healthcare. Stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay well. This has been The Deep Dive.